I still remember the day. They came to our farm like it happened yesterday, not 3 months ago. The summer sun beat down hard on my back as I hung laundry behind our weathered farmhouse. The sheets flapped in the breeze, hiding then revealing the 3 riders approaching on the dusty road. My heart jumped to my throat when I spotted them. 3 men on horseback meant trouble these days, especially with father away. "Sarah," I called my younger sister. "Get inside now." Her blonde braids bounced as she ran from the chicken coop, clutching a basket of eggs. Her eyes widened when she saw the riders. At 12 years old, she knew what strangers could mean. "Where's father?" she whispered as she rushed past me. "Still away on business," I said, ushering her through the back door. "Lock this behind me. Don't come out no matter what you hear." Father had been gone 2 weeks now. "Important business," he'd said with that look in his eyes that meant no more questions. It wasn't the first time he'd disappeared for days or weeks, leaving me to run our modest farm and watch over Sarah. At 19, I was used to the responsibility, but I'd never had to face Outlaws alone before. I smoothed my apron, took a deep breath, and walked around to the front of the house just as the riders reached our gate. The leader was easy to spot, a tall man with a jagged scar running from his left eye to his jaw. He wore a black hat pulled low, but I could still see his cold eyes studying our property. The blood in my veins turned to ice when I recognized him. Jed Winters. I'd seen him once before, speaking with father in hushed tones at the edge of our property. Father didn't know I'd seen them. Well, Jed called out, his voice rough like gravel. "Looks like we found ourselves a pretty little farm girl." The man to his right chuckled, younger, with a patchy beard and hungry eyes. The third man remained silent, his face hidden beneath his hat brim. "What business do you have here?" I asked, working to keep my voice steady. I let my hand drift to the pocket of my apron, feeling the small knife I always carried there. "Just passing through, looking for some hospitality," Jed said with a grin that made my skin crawl. "Your daddy around?" "He'll be back any minute," I lied. "Gone to town for supplies." Jed swung down from his horse, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the dirt. "Now that's funny, because I heard Samuel Jenkins has been gone near 2 weeks." My stomach dropped. They knew father's name. They've been asking about us. "Our business is with him," Jed continued, taking a step toward me. "But I suppose we could wait. Maybe you'd be kind enough to offer some water for our horses? Maybe something stronger for us." I stood my ground, though every instinct screamed to run. "We don't have much, but you're welcome to water from the well." Jed smiled, but the expression never reached his eyes. "Boys, see to the horses." The 2 men dismounted as Jed walked closer. "What's your name, girl?" "Emma," I answered, wondering if he truly didn't know who I was or if this was some kind of game. "Emma Jenkins," he said, tasting the name. "The farmer's daughter." The way he said it made me wonder what else he knew. Did he know that our farm barely broke, even most years? Did he know about father's mysterious business trips? Did he know that sometimes father came home with money that couldn't possibly have come from selling crops? "I'll fetch that water," I said, turning toward the well. "Hold on now." Jed grabbed my arm. His grip was tight enough to bruise. "You wouldn't be lying about your father returning soon, would you?" From inside the house came the sound of something falling. "Sarah!" Jed's head snapped toward the noise. "Who else is here?" he demanded. "Just my sister," I said quickly. "She's only 12. A slow smile spread across Jed's face. "Well now, why don't you invite us all inside? We can wait for your father together." The younger outlaw approached, carrying his saddlebags. "Jed, maybe we should move on. The boss wouldn't like us wasting time here." I felt a chill at the mention of the boss, a name whispered in town with fear and awe. The leader of the most dangerous gang in the territory. "The boss ain't here, is he?" Jed snapped. "And what the boss don't know won't hurt him." He turned back to me with that terrible smile. "Or us." "My father has friends in town," I warned. "The sheriff." Jed laughed. "Sheriff Davis?" That old drunk couldn't find his own shadow at noon. He leaned close, his breath hot on my face. "No one's coming to help you, girl." Little did he know that my father, Samuel Jenkins, the quiet farmer who kept to himself, was far more dangerous than any local sheriff. If these men knew who they were really dealing with, they'd be running, not swaggering onto our property, making threats. But they didn't know. And as Jed pushed me toward my own front door, I realized I might have to reveal Father's secret to save Sarah and myself. If I did, our quiet life would be over forever. If I didn't, we might not survive until Father returned. Inside, Jed ordered, pressing something cold and metal against my back. Nice and easy. No tricks. As I walked up the porch steps, I spotted movement in the trees beyond our property. A flash of color, there and gone in an instant. Someone was watching. Friend or foe, I couldn't tell, but it gave me the smallest spark of hope. Your father's got some explaining to do when he gets back, Jed whispered in my ear as he forced me through the doorway. The boss doesn't like it when someone schemes from his takes. And if Samuel Jenkins isn't back by sundown tomorrow, he let the threat hang in the air as the door swung shut behind us. I wondered if Jed Winters had any idea that he'd just threatened the daughter of the very man he called boss, and what my father would do when he found out. The kitchen felt smaller with 3 outlaws inside. Jed lounged in Father's chair like he owned it, boots up on our scrub pine table. The young one, who Jed called Billy, nervously paced by the window. The third man, tall and lean with a hawk-like nose, stood silently by the door, watching everything with dark, careful eyes. Sarah huddled behind me, fingers digging into my skirt. I could feel her trembling. "Now ain't this cozy?" Jed said, taking a long drink of our cider. "A real family gathering. What do you want with my father?" I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. Jed's eyes narrowed. "Your daddy's been collecting money from my employer. Word is, not all that money's been making its way back." I kept my face blank, though my mind was racing. Father had always been careful. How could these men suspect anything? "There must be some mistake," I said. "My father's an honest man." Jed barked out a laugh. "Honest? Samuel Jenkins?" He leaned forward, dropping his feet to the floor. "Girl, your daddy's been working for the boss for 5 years now. Collecting debts, delivering messages, handling problems." The way he said that last part made my blood run cold. Billy looked uncomfortable. "Jed, maybe we shouldn't." "Shut up," Jed snapped. "She needs to understand the trouble her father's in." He turned back to me. "Your honest father is just another outlaw. And now he's a thief too. My mean spoon. 5 years. That would explain the money, the sudden trips, the whispered conversations I'd sometimes overheard. But father, working for some criminal boss? It couldn't be true. Yet deep down, I'd always known something wasn't right. "You're lying," Sarah piped up suddenly. "Our father grows wheat and raises horses." Jed's gaze shifted to my sister, his expression softening in a way that worried me more than his anger. "Is that what he told you, little one? Did he mention where the money for those fine leather boots you're wearing came from? Or that pretty silver brooch your sister's got hidden in her dresser drawer?" My hand went instinctively to my throat. How did he know about the brooch? Father had given it to me on my last birthday, said it had been Mother's. "You've been in our rooms," I accused. "While you were hanging laundry." The hawk-nosed man spoke for the first time, his voice surprisingly gentle. "We've been watching the farm since yesterday." Yesterday? I thought of all we'd done. The normal chores, our meals, the stories I'd read to Sarah before bed. They'd seen it all, waiting like wolves circling a flock. "The boss doesn't like waiting," Jed said. "And he really doesn't like people stealing from him." He pulled out a knife and began cleaning under his fingernails with the tip. "When your father gets back, he's going to pay what he owes with interest. Or we'll take payment another way." His eyes flicked to me in a way that made my skin crawl. "You mentioned your employer," I said carefully. "This boss. Does he know you're here?" Something flickered across Jed's face, doubt, maybe even fear. "The boss gives me freedom to handle collections my way." The hawk-nosed man and Billy exchanged a glance I couldn't read. "And if my father truly works for your boss," I pressed, "shouldn't you be more careful how you treat his family? What if the boss finds out?" Jed stood suddenly, knocking the chair backward. He crossed the room in 2 strides and grabbed my chin, fingers digging painfully into my jaw. "Are you threatening me, girl?" he hissed. "Leave her alone," Sarah cried, beating her small fists against Jed's side. With his free hand, Jed shoved Sarah so hard she fell backward onto the floor. "Don't touch her," I yelled, twisting free and dropping to my sister's side. Before Jed could react, The hawk-nosed man stepped between us. That's enough, Jed. They're just scared women. This isn't why we're here. Jed's nostrils flared, but he backed away. Fine, but someone needs to teach this one some respect. He jerked his chin toward me. I'll take the little one upstairs, Billy offered suddenly. Make sure she stays out of trouble. No, I clutched Sarah tighter. It's either that or Jed watches her. The hawk-nosed man said quietly. Trust me, you want Billy. I looked at the young outlaw's face, nervous, almost apologetic. Of the three, he seemed the least dangerous. It's okay, Emma, Sarah whispered, though tears streaked her face. I'll be brave like Father taught us. I helped her stand, smoothing her rumpled dress. If you hurt her, I started. I won't, Billy promised, leading Sarah toward the stairs. Come on, little miss. Maybe you can show me those horses your daddy raises. When they were gone, I turned to face Jed again. The hawk-nosed man had retreated to his post by the door, but his eyes remained watchful. When will the boss know you're here? I asked boldly. Jed's hand cracked across my face before I even saw him move. The force knocked me against the table, and I tasted blood where my lip had split. You don't ask the questions, Jed growled. I do. Now, where does your father keep the money? I touched my bleeding lip, hatred burning in my chest. I don't know what you're talking about. Wrong answer. Jed grabbed a fistful of my hair, yanking my head back. Your father's been skimming for months. That money's somewhere on this farm. The hawk-nosed man shifted uncomfortably. Jed, the boss said to wait. The boss said to get his money back. Jed shouted, and I aimed to do just that. He twisted his grip on my hair. Last chance, girl. Where's the money? A floorboard creaked upstairs. I prayed Sarah would stay with Billy, that she wouldn't try to help me. I swear I don't know, I gasped. Jed released me with a disgusted shove. Fine, we'll tear this place apart board by board if we have to. And when your father finally shows his face, he drew his finger across his throat in a slashing motion. The boss wants him alive, the hawk-nosed man reminded him. Jed snorted. For now, as they began searching the kitchen, pulling out drawers and emptying cupboards, I sank into a chair, mind racing. If father truly worked for their boss, why would he steal from him? It made no sense, unless a terrible suspicion began forming in my mind. The secret trips, the unexplained money, the way father always seemed to know things before anyone else. What if Jed had it all wrong? What if my father wasn't just another outlaw working for the boss? What if Samuel Jenkins, the quiet farmer who raised horses and grew wheat, actually was the boss? The sound of approaching horses made us all freeze. Jed drew his gun, moving to the window. 3 riders, he said, his voice tight. Coming fast. The hawk-nosed man joined him. It's not Jenkins, he reported. It's Rose and her men. Jed cursed viciously. The boss sent his lieutenant? Why would he? He turned to me, eyes suddenly wide with an emotion I couldn't name. Realization, perhaps, or fear. What's your name? He demanded again. Your full name. Emma. I answered, then lifted my chin defiantly. Emma Rose Jenkins. The color drained from Jed's face as the thunder of hooves stopped outside our door. The front door burst open with such force it slammed against the wall. A woman stood in the doorway, backlit by the afternoon sun. She wasn't tall, but she carried herself like someone much bigger. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, and she wore men's riding clothes, dusty from the road. 2 armed men flanked her, their hands resting on their pistols. Rose, Jed whispered, his face ashen. The woman's eyes swept the room, taking in the mess the outlaws had made of our kitchen. When her gaze landed on me and my split lip, something dangerous flashed across her face. Emma, she said, her voice softer than I expected. Are you hurt? Before I could answer, Jed stepped forward. Rose, this isn't what it looks like. We were just. Rose silenced him with a raised hand. Where's the younger girl? Upstairs, I said quickly. With one of them. Rose nodded to one of her men, who immediately headed for the stairs. Wait, Jed protested. Billy's just watching her. He hasn't touched the kid. Rose ignored him, focusing on me. Your father sent me. He'll be here by morning. My heart leapt. Father was coming home. But the look on Jed's face, pure terror, made me wonder exactly what that meant for these men. The boss is coming here? Jed's voice had climbed an octave. Why would he? He stopped suddenly, looking between Rose and me with dawning horror. The hawk-nosed man by the door cursed softly. It's true then. Jenkins is the boss. Rose smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You boys picked the wrong farm to rob. Jed shook his head frantically. No, there's been a mistake. We were told Jenkins was skimming, that he needed to be taught a lesson. And who told you that? Rose asked quietly. Jed's mouth opened, then closed again. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made us all turn. Rose's man was coming down with Billy in front of him, hands raised. Sarah followed close behind, looking frightened but unharmed. Emma, she cried, running to me. I wrapped my arms around her, relief washing over me. She's okay, Billy said quickly. I swear I didn't hurt her. Rose nodded to her man, who lowered his gun slightly. Sit, she ordered the 3 outlaws, pointing to our kitchen chairs. Now, they obeyed without question, even Jed. The change in him was shocking, from swaggering bully to frightened rabbit in moments. You were told Samuel Jenkins was stealing from a boss, Rose said, pacing slowly in front of them. Who gave you this information? Harlan, Jed answered immediately. Harlan Porter. Said he had proof. Rose exchanged a look with her men that I couldn't read. And did you see this proof? She asked. Jed swallowed hard. He showed me ledgers, numbers that didn't match up. So you decided to come to Jenkins' farm, threaten his daughters, and search his house. Rose continued, her voice dangerously calm. All without asking the boss first. I thought I was doing him a favor, Jed protested weakly. Rose leaned in close to him. The boss doesn't like people who do him favors he didn't ask for. She straightened and addressed all 3 men. Samuel Jenkins has been the boss for 15 years. He built everything from nothing. Every dollar you've ever earned came from his plans, his risks. My mind reeled at her words. 15 years? That went back to before Mother died, before we even moved to this farm. Had Father always been living this double life? Please, Billy whispered, I didn't know. None of us knew who lived here. Rose studied him thoughtfully. You're new. Billy, right? When he nodded, she continued. The boss might show you mercy. As for you two, she looked at Jed and the hawk-nosed man. That depends on how helpful you are now. What do you want to know? Jed asked desperately. Everything about Harlan Porter. Where he is, who he meets with, what he said exactly about Jenkins. As Jed began talking rapidly, Rose motioned for me to follow her to the corner of the room. Are you really okay? She asked quietly when we were out of earshot. I nodded, though my split lip throbbed. Did Father really send you? The moment he heard there was trouble. He'll be furious when he sees what they did to you. Is it true? I had to ask. Is he really what they said? Rose's eyes softened slightly. That's for him to explain. But yes, your father is an important man. More important than these fools could ever understand. Why didn't he tell us? I whispered. To protect you and Sarah. She glanced at my sister, who was watching wide-eyed from across the room. If people knew who you were, you'd never be safe. The irony wasn't lost on me. We weren't very safe today. No, Rose agreed grimly. And someone will pay for that. A chill ran down my spine at her words. Not because I feared what she meant, but because part of me wanted to see it happen. What will you do with them? I asked, looking at the 3 outlaws. Keep them here until your father arrives. He'll want to deal with this himself. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting our kitchen in golden light that seemed at odds with the tension filling the room. I thought about all the quiet evenings I'd spent here with Father and Sarah, never suspecting that Father left our farm to become someone else, someone feared, someone powerful. Emma, Rose said, bringing me back to the present. There's something else you should know. She hesitated, which seemed unlike her. Harlan Porter wouldn't have acted alone. If he's trying to move against your father, he has help. From who? That's what we need to find out. She looked at the 3 men being guarded by her men, and they're going to help us. Jed had stopped talking and was watching us, fear evident on his face. What about Sarah? I asked. If it's not safe here, my men will stand guard tonight. No one will get near this farm without us knowing. I nodded, grateful but unsettled. Our peaceful farm had transformed into something else. A fortress, a prison, the center of a storm I hadn't known was brewing. Get some rest if you can, Rose advised. Your father will be here at dawn, and things will change quickly after that. As I took Sarah upstairs to our bedroom, I couldn't help wondering what change would mean. Would he have to leave our farm? Would I finally learn the truth about what father really did during those long absences? And most troubling of all, once I knew the whole truth about Samuel Jenkins, would I ever see him the same way again? I didn't sleep that night. How could I, with 3 outlaws tied up in our kitchen and armed men patrolling our property? Sarah finally drifted off near midnight, exhausted from crying. I sat by our bedroom window, watching the darkness for any sign of father. The first pink streaks of dawn were just appearing when I spotted a lone rider approaching from the east. Even at a distance, I recognized father's straight-backed posture in the saddle. My heart pounded as I watched him dismount at the gate, speaking briefly with one of Rose's men. I shook Sarah gently. Father's home, I whispered. She rubbed her eyes. Is it over now? Can things go back to normal? I didn't have a heart to tell her that normal might be gone forever. We dressed quickly and made our way downstairs. Rose was at the front door to meet father as he entered. They spoke in hushed tones, their heads bent close together. Father looked exactly as he always did. Weathered work clothes, graying hair neatly combed, his face lined from years in the sun. Nothing about him suggested he could be the fearsome leader these outlaws called the boss. Then he saw me, and his expression changed. His eyes fixed on my split lip, which had swollen overnight. Emma, he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. He crossed the room in 4 long strides and gently tilted my face to examine the injury. Who did this? The one called Jed, I answered. Father's jaw clenched. He turned to Rose. Bring them in. Rose nodded to her men, who led the 3 outlaws into the main room. They'd been kept in a root cellar overnight, and they looked dirty, rumpled, and in Jed's case, sporting a bruise I hadn't seen before. Father studied them silently. The quiet was more terrifying than shouting would have been. Mr. Jenkins, Billy blurted out, unable to bear the silence. I swear I didn't touch your daughters. I try to keep the little ones safe. Father regarded him thoughtfully. Rose tells me you're new to our operation. Yes, sir. 3 months only. Father nodded. We'll discuss your future later. His gaze shifted to the hawk-nosed man. Thomas, I expected better from you. Thomas lowered his eyes. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know this was your home. That's not an excuse, Father replied coldly. You followed Jed here without question, without approval. He turned finally to Jed, who visibly trembled under his gaze. And you struck my daughter. Jed fell to his knees. Boss, please, I didn't know who she was. Harlan said. I know what Harlan said. Father cut him off. The question is why you believed him. Why you acted without my orders. He showed me proof, Jed stammered. Ledgers, numbers. Said you were skimming, that you'd gone soft living out here, pretending to be a farmer. Father's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. And you thought that gave you the right to come to my home? To threaten my children? Before Jed could answer, the sound of approaching horses reached us. Rose moved quickly to the window. 7 riders, she reported. Harlan's with them. Father didn't look surprised. Right on time. He turned to me. Emma, take Sarah upstairs. Stay there until I come for you. But Father, I began. Now, Emma, he said firmly. I wanted to protest, to demand answers to the questions that had kept me awake all night. But the look in his eyes stopped me. I took Sarah's hand and led her toward the stairs. Wait, Father called. When I turned back, his expression had softened slightly. I promise we'll talk after this is over. You deserve the truth. I nodded and continued upstairs with Sarah. But instead of going to our bedroom, I led her to the small window at the end of the hallway that overlooked the front yard. From there, we could see everything without being seen. 7 men had dismounted in front of our house. Their leader was a large man with a thick beard. Harlan Porter, I assumed. Father stepped onto the porch to meet them, looking surprisingly small against their numbers. Rose and her men flanked him, outnumbered but steady. Jenkins, Harlan called out, his voice carrying clearly to our hiding place. I see Rose found you. Did she tell you what your men did to my brother? Father's voice was calm when he replied. Your brother tried to rob a stagecoach without my approval. 3 people died. It was a mistake, Harlan shot back. One that cost me money and brought unwanted attention. The punishment was fair. Harlan spat on the ground. Fair? You had him whipped and left him on the trail like trash. Sarah gasped beside me. I put my arm around her shoulders, wishing I could shield her from these revelations about her father. He lived, Father pointed out, which is more than I can say for the guard he shot. This isn't about my brother anymore, Harlan declared. It's about you losing your edge. Living out here, playing farmer, while the rest of us take the risks. He gestured at our modest farmhouse. 5 years you've been hiding your family here, pretending to be something you're not. The men are talking, Jenkins. They're saying maybe it's time for new leadership. Father didn't move, didn't raise his voice. Is that why you sent Jed and his boys to my home? To threaten my daughters? Something flickered across Harlan's face. Surprise, perhaps. I sent them to find proof you've been skimming. Whatever else they did was their own idea. They struck my daughter, Father said, each word precise and cold. They frightened my children. In my home. A murmur ran through Harlan's men. This seemed to be news to some of them. That wasn't the plan, Harlan said, suddenly less certain. But it doesn't change anything. The men want a vote. Father actually smiled at that. A vote? Since when do we vote on leadership, Harlan? Since you started going soft, Harlan retorted. Look at you, a farmer with dirt under his fingernails. The boss I knew would never have allowed his men to see him like this. The boss you knew built an empire from nothing, Father replied. He chose where and how to live. He decided who knew what. He stepped closer to Harlan, and he never, ever tolerated betrayal. The tension in the yard was thick enough to cut. I held my breath, waiting for violence to erupt. But Father merely turned and called toward the house. Bring them out. Rose's men emerged from our cellar door, leading Jed and Thomas with their hands bound. Billy followed, unbound, but clearly still a prisoner. These men came to my home on your word, Father said to Harlan. They threatened my family based on your lies. He turned to address all the men in the yard. For 15 years, I've led this organization with one simple rule. Family is off limits. We don't target innocents. We don't harm children. We are not animals. Several of Harlan's men shifted uncomfortably. Harlan broke that rule, Father continued. He sent men to my home, knowing my daughters were here alone. I didn't tell them to hurt anyone. Harlan protested. Yet my daughter bears the mark of their visit, Father replied. And now you all have a choice to make. You can ride with Harlan, or you can ride with me. But understand this. Only one of us will be left standing when this day is over. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, 5 of Harlan's 7 men stepped away from him, crossing the yard to stand behind Father. Harlan's face contorted with rage. Cowards, all of you. Only one man remained at Harlan's side now, a burly, scarred man whose hand hovered near his gun. It's over, Harlan, Father said quietly. You've lost. Not yet, I haven't, Harlan snarled, and in one swift motion, he drew his pistol. The yard erupted in chaos. Sarah screamed as gunshots rang out. I pulled her away from a window, shielding her with my body as we crouched on the floor. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it had begun. In the terrible silence that followed, I heard heavy footsteps on the stairs. I pushed Sarah behind me, prepared to face whatever came through that door. It was Rose, her face grim but calm. Your father wants you downstairs, she said. It's safe now. As we descended the stairs, I braced myself for what we might find. Had Father been shot? Was he hurt? Would there be bodies in our front yard? Father was waiting in the kitchen, unharmed. He looked tired, older somehow, but his eyes softened when he saw us. Are you all right? He asked. I nodded, holding Sarah close to my side. What happened? Harlan made his choice, Father said simply. Now we need to make ours. He gestured for us to sit at the kitchen table, the same table where just yesterday Jed had put his dirty boots. It's time we talked about who I really am. Father placed both hands flat on our kitchen table, looking more tired than I had ever seen him. The morning light streaming through the windows revealed new lines on his face I hadn't noticed before. Behind us, Rose stood guard at the door while two of her men cleaned their guns at the far end of the room. I never wanted you girls to see this side of me, Father began, his voice rough with emotion. Your mother and I agreed long ago that you would be raised away from my business. Sarah's small hand found mine under the table. Are you really an outlaw, Father? She asked in a tiny voice. Father's eyes softened as he looked at her. I've done things I'm not proud of, Sarah. Made choices that would be hard for you to understand right now. But you're the boss, I said, still struggling to connect the gentle father I knew with the man those outlaws feared. You hurt people. Sometimes, he admitted, not looking away from my gaze. When necessary. But Emma, you must understand, I built my organization to protect people, not just to profit from them. I raised my eyebrows in disbelief. Protect people? By breaking the law. Father sighed deeply. When I met your mother, this territory was lawless in the worst way. The railroad companies were stealing land, the banks were cheating farmers, and the local law was bought and paid for by whoever had the most money. So you became an outlaw to fight that. The idea seemed ridiculous. I became what I needed to be, he corrected. At first, we just protected the smaller ranchers from cattle thieves the sheriff wouldn't pursue. Then we started making sure farmers got fair prices for their crops when the big buyers tried to cheat them. A shadow crossed his face. But yes, over time, we did things that crossed lines. Robbed trains carrying payroll for companies that had stolen land. Threatened men who had hurt others without consequence. Rose spoke up from her position by the door. Your father has rules, Emma. We don't harm innocents. We don't steal from those who can't afford the loss. We keep our word. Honor among thieves? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Emma, Father said gently, I know this is hard to hear. But everything I've done, every choice I've made, was to build something better for you and Sarah. By lying to us our whole lives? Father flinched as if I'd struck him. After your mother died, I tried to leave that life behind. For 2 years, we were just farmers. But the debts kept mounting, and then the drought came. His hands curled into fists on the table. I had 2 little girls to feed, so I reached out to old contacts just for a few jobs. Enough to keep the farm going. I remember those hard years after Mother's death. The quiet meals where Father barely ate so Sarah and I could have more. The worn clothes we mended again and again. But it didn't stop at a few jobs, I guessed. Father shook his head. The old network had fallen apart without leadership. Men like Harlan were taking advantage, hurting people who couldn't fight back. I told myself I was just fixing what I'd built before, making it right again. A sharp knock at the door interrupted us. Rose opened it carefully, hand on her pistol, then relaxed. It's Miguel, she announced. The man who entered was lean and weathered, with intelligent eyes that took in the room at a glance. He nodded respectfully to Father. The property is secure, he reported. Harlan's body has been taken care of. The 3 from yesterday are waiting in the barn for your decision. Father nodded. And the men who came with Harlan? The 5 who switched sides have sworn loyalty again. The one who stayed with him died in the gunfight. I shivered at how calmly they discussed death. This was my father's real world. What about the farm? Sarah asked suddenly. Do we have to leave? Father exchanged a look with Rose that I couldn't interpret. I'm afraid so, sweetheart, he said gently. It's not safe here anymore. Too many people know about this place now. Sarah's face crumpled. But where will we go? This is our home. I have a house, Father said. A big one, in a town 3 days' ride from here. You'll each have your own room. There are gardens, horses, a prison, I said flatly. A beautiful prison where we'll be surrounded by outlaws and killers. Father's expression hardened slightly. My men are not killers, Emma. They're loyal people who've made hard choices, just like I have. What about Jed? I challenged. The man who hit me? Is he one of your loyal men? Father's eyes darkened. Jed will never hurt anyone again. I promise you that. The quiet certainty in his voice sent a chill down my spine. You're going to kill him, I whispered. No, Father replied. I'm going to let him live with what he's done. Every day, knowing he struck my daughter and can never make amends. Miguel cleared his throat. Boss, we should move soon. If Harlan had other allies. Father nodded. Give us an hour to pack. When Miguel and Rose had left us alone, Sarah burst into tears. I don't want to leave. What about my friends? My teacher? Our chickens? Father knelt beside her chair, stroking her hair. I know it's hard, Sarah, but I promise you'll make new friends. And we can bring your favorite chickens. This small concession seemed to comfort her. She wiped her eyes and nodded. Emma. Father looked up at me. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But I need your help now. Sarah needs you. I want to stay angry, to reject this new reality. But the truth was, I had always known something wasn't right about her life. The unexplained money. Father's mysterious trips. The way he sometimes studied passing strangers with watchful eyes. One condition, I said finally. No more lies. I want to know everything. Father hesitated, then nodded slowly. As much as I can tell you without putting you in danger. Yes, it wasn't enough, but it was a start. I'll help Sarah pack, I said, standing up. As I guided my sister upstairs, I heard Father speaking quietly to someone in the kitchen. Pausing on the landing, I strained to listen. Keep them safe at all costs, Father was saying. If anything happens to me, you take them straight to Martha in Silver Creek. She'll know what to do. It won't come to that, came Rose's confident reply. The men are with you now more than ever. Harlan's challenge has only strengthened your position. Perhaps, but there's still the matter of the ledgers Harlan showed Jed. Someone has been falsifying my books, and I need to know who. Their voices dropped lower, and I couldn't hear more. But I'd heard enough to know that our troubles weren't over. They were just beginning. As I helped Sarah fold her dresses and choose which toys to bring, I wondered what our new life would be like. Would we be prisoners in a fine house, or would we become part of Father's secret world? And if we did, what would that make us? The daughter of the boss. The thought made me shiver as I realized all the doors that title might open, and all the dangers it would surely bring. We left our farm as the sun climbed high in the sky. 3 wagons for our belongings, and a carriage for Sarah and me. Father rode alongside on his black stallion, flanked by Rose and Miguel. 10 armed men surrounded us, their eyes constantly scanning the horizon. It felt like we were royalty, or prisoners. Are all these men yours? I asked Father during a brief stop to water the horses. They work for me, he corrected, but they're not owned. How many are there? In total? Father considered me for a moment, as if deciding how much to share. About 50 who work directly for me. Hundreds more who follow my rules and pay for protection. The number shocked me. I'd imagined perhaps a dozen outlaws, not an army. And they all fear you, I said, watching his men jump to attention when Father approached. They respect me, he replied. Fear alone doesn't build loyalty, Emma. These men follow me because I treat them fairly, because I keep my promises. I thought of Jed tied in our barn that morning. Father had spoken to him privately before we left. I hadn't heard what was said, but when they brought Jed out, his face was ashen. They'd tied him to a horse and sent him away with 2 guards. What will happen to Jed? I asked. He'll work off his debt, Father said. In the mines. Hard labor, but he'll live. And what about Billy, the young one? Father's expression softened slightly. He showed kindness to Sarah. That counts for something. He'll get another chance under close supervision. We continued our journey as the landscape changed from the open farmland I knew to rolling hills dotted with pine trees. We made camp the first night in a secluded valley beside a creek. The men worked with quiet efficiency, setting up tents and preparing food. Sarah was fascinated by it all, watching wide-eyed as they built fires and posted guards. It's like we're on an adventure, she whispered to me as we prepared for bed in our tent. I didn't share her excitement. Every shadow, every strange sound made me start. This world of Father's felt dangerous in ways our quiet farm never had. The second day brought rain, cold and relentless. We huddled in the carriage, watching the countryside blur through wet windows. Father rode through it all, seemingly unbothered by the downpour. Once, when we stopped to fix a broken wagon wheel, I caught him staring at me with such sadness in his eyes that I had to look away. That night, as we gathered around the fire after dinner, one of the men produced a battered guitar. Soon the camp was filled with music, rough voices singing songs about outlaws and lawmen, love and betrayal. To my surprise, Father joined in occasionally his deep voice blending with the others. "Your mother loved music," he told me quietly as we listened. "She used to sing you to sleep every night when you were small." "I remember," I said, though the memories were faint. "She taught me green sleeves on her old piano." Father smiled sadly. "We had to sell that piano during the drought. I've always regretted that." "There's a lot you regret?" He nodded slowly. "More than you know." The third day dawned clear and cold. Father announced we would reach our destination by nightfall. As we traveled, the wilderness gradually gave way to small farms, then larger ranches. We passed through a small town without stopping, the locals watching our procession with curious eyes. "Do they know?" I asked Rose, who was riding beside our carriage. "About Father?" "They know Samuel Jenkins is a wealthy businessman with interests in ranching and mining," she replied. "Most don't ask questions beyond that." "And the law?" "The sheriff?" Rose's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. "Sheriff Davis understands that Mr. Jenkins helps keep peace in ways he can't. Their arrangement is mutually beneficial. My father owned the law." The realization shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Late afternoon brought us to a tall, iron gate set in a stone wall that stretched in both directions as far as I could see. Two armed guards snapped to attention as we approached. Beyond the gate, a winding drive led through carefully tended grounds to the largest house I had ever seen. "That's where we'll live," Sarah gasped, pressing her face to the carriage window. The house was 3 stories of red brick and white columns, with wide windows that caught the setting sun like fire. Gardens surrounded it on all sides, and a stable stood off to the left. It wasn't just a house, it was a mansion. "Welcome home," Father said as he helped us down from the carriage. Inside was even more impressive: polished wood floors, fine furniture, paintings in heavy gold frames. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands greeted us in the vast entryway. "Mrs. Cooper," Father said warmly. "These are my daughters, Emma and Sarah." "Finally," she said, smiling at us. "Your father has talked of nothing else these past 5 years. Come, let me show you to your rooms. Dinner will be ready soon." We followed her up a grand staircase, Sarah skipping ahead in excitement. Our rooms were side by side, each larger than our entire cabin had been, with 4-poster beds and huge wardrobes. "Father, this is—" I trailed off, unable to find words. "Too much?" he asked quietly. "Dishonest," I finished. "All these years, we lived simply, worked hard. And you had this waiting." "I built this place for your mother," he explained, "before you were born. She never liked it, said it was too grand, too empty. She preferred our little farm." His eyes clouded with memory. "After she died, I couldn't bear to live here. But I kept it, knowing someday you girls might need a safe place." Before I could respond, a commotion erupted downstairs. Raised voices, boots on hardwood. Father tensed instantly. "Stay here," he ordered, then hurried downstairs. Of course, I followed as soon as he was out of sight, keeping to the shadows of the upper hallway where I could see and hear without being spotted. Miguel stood in the entryway, his clothes travel-stained and his horse visible through the open front door, heaving from hard riding. "We found him," Miguel reported tersely, "trying to cross into the territory. Had papers for a steamer heading south." Father's voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. "Bring him to the study." 2 men dragged in a third between them. A well-dressed man with spectacles and thinning hair. His fine suit was torn, and blood stained his collar. "Mr. Wallace," Father said, his voice deceptively calm. "My accountant, the man I trusted with all my books." Wallace's eyes darted around the room, looking for escape or mercy. Finding neither, he sagged in his captor's grip. "Jenkins, please," he begged. "It wasn't my idea. Harlan threatened my family. Yet I notice your family is safe at home, while you were fleeing with $10,000 of my money," Father observed. "I can explain." "Yes," Father cut him off. "You will. Every detail, every name. Starting now." He nodded toward a closed door off the main hall. The men dragged Wallace through it, his pleas fading as the heavy door swung shut. I shrank back against the wall, suddenly cold. This calculated man. This was not the father who had taught me to ride, who had read stories to Sarah at bedtime, who had patiently shown me how to mend fences and plant crops. He won't hurt him. I startled at Rose's voice beside me. I hadn't heard her approach. How can you be sure? I whispered. Because that's not who your father is, she said simply. Mr. Wallace will return the money and face consequences, but Samuel Jenkins doesn't torture or kill without cause. Is that supposed to comfort me? Rose studied me with those sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. No, but it's the truth. Your father walks a difficult line, Emma. In this world, showing mercy can be seen as weakness. Yet he manages to be both merciful and feared. What happens now? I asked. Now, Rose smiled slightly. Now you decide who you want to be in this new life. Your father's dutiful daughter? A proper lady who knows nothing of his business? Or perhaps something else entirely? Before I could answer, Sarah appeared in her doorway, wearing a new dress Mrs. Cooper must have laid out. Emma, look, she twirled, making the blue fabric swirl around her ankles. Isn't it pretty? Mrs. Cooper says there are more in the wardrobe. Some for you too. Her innocent excitement cut through my dark thoughts. Whatever path I chose, I needed to protect Sarah, her happiness, her future. That much I knew for certain. It's beautiful, I told her. Let's go see what else we can find. As I followed Sarah back to her room, I glanced over my shoulder. Rose was gone, but the question she had posed remained. Who did I want to be in this dangerous new world? The boss's daughter? My father's conscience? Or perhaps, I thought with a sudden clarity that surprised me, I could become something no one expected. Not even father. I could become someone powerful in my own right. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight as I crept down the grand staircase, careful to avoid the third step that creaked. 2 weeks had passed since we arrived at Father's mansion, and while Sarah had quickly settled into our new life, I remained restless. Each night, I explored our enormous house, learning its secrets while everyone slept. Tonight, I had a different destination in mind, Father's study. The room where Wallace had been questioned, where Father conducted his mysterious business. By day, the door remained locked. But tonight, I had seen Father retire to bed early, complaining of a headache. This might be my only chance. The hallway was dark except for moonlight streaming through tall windows. I paused outside the heavy oak door, listening. Silence. With trembling fingers, I tested the handle, expecting it to be locked as always. It turned. My heart pounded as I slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind me. Moonlight illuminated a large desk, bookshelves lining the walls, and a map of the territory spread across one wall, marked with pins of different colors. This was the center of Father's web. I lit a small lamp, keeping the flame low. Father's desk was meticulously organized, ledgers stacked neatly, papers in tidy piles. I opened the top drawer and found nothing unusual. Pens, ink, sealing wax. The second drawer contained letters, most addressed simply to S or the boss. I skimmed a few, learning about shipments, payments, disputes settled. The bottom drawer was locked. Looking for something, I gasped, nearly dropping the lamp. Rose stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me with those calculating eyes. I was just... My mind raced for an excuse. Snooping, she finished for me. Understandable. I'd do the same in your position. To my surprise, she came in and closed the door instead of sending me back to bed. Find anything interesting? No, I admitted. Nothing that explains... I gestured vaguely. How your father became the most powerful man in 3 territories. I nodded. Rose studied me for a long moment. Your father doesn't know I'm telling you this, but you deserve to know why. She moved to a bookshelf and pressed something I couldn't see. A section of the wall swung open, revealing a hidden compartment. From it, she removed a small wooden box. Your mother made him promise to keep you away from this life, Rose said, placing the box on the desk. It nearly broke him when she died, but he honored that promise for years. Until Harlan forced his hand. What's in the box? I asked. The beginning. Rose pushed it toward me. Open it. Inside lay an old pocket watch, a faded photograph of a young woman who wasn't my mother, and a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, Railroad tycoon acquitted in death of local farmer. Your grandfather, Rose explained, pointing to the article. Your father's father. The railroad wanted his land for tracks. When he refused to sell, they sent men to persuade him. The persuasion went too far, and he died. The man responsible claimed self-defense and walked free. I read the article with growing horror. Father was only 15. Rose nodded. With 5 younger siblings to feed. No one would hire him. The railroad made sure of that. So he stole food to keep his family alive. Then money when food wasn't enough. What happened to his brothers and sisters? I asked, realizing I'd never heard mention of them. Scattered to orphanages and distant relatives. Your father tried to keep them together, but... She sighed. By the time he had enough power and money to find them all, years had passed. Some didn't want to be found. I looked at the photograph. And her, your father's first love, Anna. She died in a fire set by the same railroad man who killed his father. A warning to others who might stand against progress. Rose's voice hardened. That was when Samuel Jenkins stopped being just a thief and became something more. The story filled in pieces of my father I had never understood. His insistence on justice, his hatred of bullies, his fierce protection of family. But it didn't excuse everything. He's still an outlaw, I said. A criminal. Yes, Rose agreed simply. But ask yourself this. If the law protects the powerful while the innocent suffer, is breaking that law always wrong? Before I could answer, voices approached in the hallway. Rose quickly returned the box to its hiding place and extinguished my lamp. Say nothing of this, she whispered, guiding me to a side door I hadn't noticed. For your father's sake. The door led to a narrow servants' corridor. I followed it back to the main staircase and hurried to my room, my mind racing with all I had learned. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake thinking about justice and power, right and wrong. The line between them seemed thinner than I had ever imagined. Breakfast the next morning brought a surprise. Billy, the young outlaw who had protected Sarah at our farm, stood nervously in the dining room when we entered. Good morning, Miss Emma, Miss Sarah, he said, hat in hands. Mr. Jenkins asked me to escort you into town today. If you'd like to go, that is. Sarah clapped her hands with delight. Can we, Emma? Please? I want to see the shops. Father watched me over his coffee cup, waiting for my reaction. This was a test, I realized. A small taste of freedom to see what we would do with it. That sounds lovely, I said carefully. Thank you, Billy. Father nodded, pleased. Billy has proven himself trustworthy. He'll make sure you both stay safe. The town was larger than I expected, with proper brick buildings, a school, even a small theater. People nodded respectfully as we passed, some calling out greetings to Mr. Jenkins' daughters. Our father's influence was evident everywhere. While Sarah admired ribbons in the mercantile, I noticed Billy watching the street with vigilant eyes. Are we in danger? I asked quietly. He startled slightly. No, Miss Emma. Just being careful. Your father would have my hide if anything happened to you. He trusts you, I observed. After everything that happened. Billy's cheeks colored. He gave me a second chance when he shouldn't have. I won't waste it. As we walked back to our carriage, laden with packages Father had instructed us to buy, new dresses, books, art supplies for Sarah, I spotted a familiar face across the street. The accountant, Wallace, looking much worse for wear. His fine clothes were gone, replaced by rough workman's garb. He was sweeping the boardwalk in front of the assayer's office. He saw me too. For a moment, fear flashed across his face. Then he lowered his eyes and continued sweeping. Father, let him live, I murmured, half to myself. Of course he did, Billy said. The boss doesn't kill unless there's no other choice. Wallace is paying back what he stole, penny by penny. I studied Billy's face. You admire him. My father. Everyone does, Billy said simply. He's tough but fair. Protects his own. Keeps his word. But at what cost? I wondered. And to whom? The answer came sooner than I expected. As we loaded our purchases into the carriage, a well-dressed man approached, flanked by 2 others whose hands rested too casually near their guns. Well, the man said, looking me up and down in a way that made my skin crawl. Samuel Jenkins' secret daughters. I've been waiting to meet you. Billy stepped between us. Mr. Blackwood, the ladies were just leaving. Not yet, I think. Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. I have a message for their father. Perhaps they'd be kind enough to deliver it. Any message for the boss can go through proper channels, Billy said, his voice steady despite being outnumbered. This one's personal. Blackwood leaned around Billy to look at me. Tell your father that Harlan Porter was my friend. And I don't forget my friends or their enemies. As he turned to leave, he added, beautiful girls. It would be a shame if something happened to them in this dangerous world. Billy's hand had moved to his gun. You threatening these ladies, Blackwood? The man laughed. Just making conversation. For now. He tipped his hat mockingly. Ladies. As they walked away, I realized I was shaking. Not just with fear, but with anger. Who was that? I demanded as Billy hurried us into the carriage. Victor Blackwood. Runs the gambling hall south of here. Sometimes works with your father, sometimes against him. Billy flicked the reins, setting the horses moving faster than was proper in town. We need to get you home. Because I'm just the farmer's daughter? I asked bitterly. The boss's weakness to be protected? Billy glanced at me in surprise. No, Miss Emma. Because Blackwood's a snake, and your father needs to know he's showing his fangs. As our carriage sped back toward the mansion, I made a decision. I was tired of being a pawn in my father's world. Something to be protected, threatened, used as leverage. If this was to be my life now, I would learn to play the game myself. Starting with Victor Blackwood. Act 7. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight as I crept down the grand staircase, careful to avoid the third step that creaked. 2 weeks had passed since we arrived at Father's mansion, and while Sarah had quickly settled into our new life, I remained restless. Each night, I explored our enormous house, learning its secrets while everyone slept. Tonight, I had a different destination in mind, Father's study. The room where Wallace had been questioned, where Father conducted his mysterious business. By day, the door remained locked. But tonight, I had seen Father retire to bed early, complaining of a headache. This might be my only chance. The hallway was dark except for moonlight streaming through tall windows. I paused outside the heavy oak door, listening. Silence. With trembling fingers, I tested the handle, expecting it to be locked, as always. It turned. My heart pounded as I slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind me. Moonlight illuminated a large desk, bookshelves lining the walls, and a map of the territory spread across one wall, marked with pins of different colors. This was the center of Father's web. I lit a small lamp, keeping the flame low. Father's desk was meticulously organized, ledgers stacked neatly, papers in tidy piles. I opened the top drawer and found nothing unusual: pens, ink, sealing wax. The second drawer contained letters, most addressed simply to S or the boss. I skimmed a few, learning about shipments, payments, disputes settled. The bottom drawer was locked. Looking for something, I gasped, nearly dropping the lamp. Rose stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me with those calculating eyes. I was just... My mind raced for an excuse. Snooping, she finished for me. Understandable. I'd do the same in your position. To my surprise, she came in and closed the door instead of sending me back to bed. Find anything interesting? No, I admitted. Nothing that explains. I gestured vaguely. How your father became the most powerful man in 3 territories. I nodded. Rose studied me for a long moment. Your father doesn't know I'm telling you this, but you deserve to know why. She moved to a bookshelf and pressed something I couldn't see. A section of the wall swung open, revealing a hidden compartment. From it, she removed a small wooden box. Your mother made him promise to keep you away from this life, Rose said, placing the box on the desk. It nearly broke him when she died, but he honored that promise for years, until Harlan forced his hand. What's in the box? I asked. The beginning. Rose pushed it toward me. Open it. Inside lay an old pocket watch, a faded photograph of a young woman who wasn't my mother, and a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, Railroad Tycoon Acquitted in Death of Local Farmer. Your grandfather. Rose explained, pointing to the article. Your father's father. The railroad wanted his land for tracks. When he refused to sell, they sent men to persuade him. The persuasion went too far, and he died. The man responsible claimed self-defense and walked free. I read the article with growing horror. Father was only 15. Rose nodded. With 5 younger siblings to feed. No one would hire him. The railroad made sure of that. So he stole food to keep his family alive. Then money when food wasn't enough. What happened to his brothers and sisters? I asked, realizing I'd never heard mention of them. Scattered to orphanages and distant relatives. Your father tried to keep them together, but she sighed. By the time he had enough power and money to find them all, years had passed. Some didn't want to be found. I looked at the photograph. And her, your father's first love, Anna. She died in a fire set by the same railroad man who killed his father. A warning to others who might stand against progress. Rose's voice hardened. That was when Samuel Jenkins stopped being just a thief and became something more. The story filled in pieces of my father I had never understood. His insistence on justice, his hatred of bullies, his fierce protection of family. But it didn't excuse everything. He's still an outlaw, I said. A criminal. Yes, Rose agreed simply. But ask yourself this. If the law protects the powerful while the innocent suffer, is breaking that law always wrong? Before I could answer, voices approached in the hallway. Rose quickly returned the box to its hiding place and extinguished my lamp. Say nothing of this, she whispered, guiding me to a side door I hadn't noticed. For your father's sake. The door led to a narrow servant's corridor. I followed it back to the main staircase and hurried to my room, my mind racing with all I had learned. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake thinking about justice and power, right and wrong. The line between them seemed thinner than I had ever imagined. Breakfast the next morning brought a surprise. Billy, the young outlaw who had protected Sarah at our farm, stood nervously in the dining room when we entered. Good morning, Miss Emma, Miss Sarah, he said, hat in hands. Mr. Jenkins asked me to escort you into town today. If you'd like to go, that is. Sarah clapped her hands with delight. Can we, Emma? Please? I want to see the shops. Father watched me over his coffee cup, waiting for my reaction. This was a test, I realized. A small taste of freedom to see what we would do with it. That sounds lovely, I said carefully. Thank you, Billy. Father nodded, pleased. Billy has proven himself trustworthy. He'll make sure you both stay safe. The town was larger than I expected, with proper brick buildings, a school, even a small theater. People nodded respectfully as we passed, some calling out greetings to Mr. Jenkins' daughters. Our father's influence was evident everywhere. While Sarah admired ribbons and a mercantile, I noticed Billy watching the street with vigilant eyes. Are we in danger? I asked quietly. He startled slightly. No, Miss Emma, just being careful. Your father would have my hide if anything happened to you. He trusts you, I observed. After everything that happened. Billy's cheeks colored. He gave me a second chance when he shouldn't have. I won't waste it. As we walked back to our carriage, laden with packages Father had instructed us to buy, new dresses, books, art supplies for Sarah, I spotted a familiar face across the street. The accountant, Wallace, looking much worse for wear. His fine clothes were gone, replaced by rough workman's garb. He was sweeping the boardwalk in front of the assayer's office. He saw me too. For a moment, fear flashed across his face. Then he lowered his eyes and continued sweeping. Father, let him live, I murmured, half to myself. Of course he did, Billy said. The boss doesn't kill unless there's no other choice. Wallace is paying back what he stole, penny by penny. I studied Billy's face. You admire him. My father. Everyone does, Billy said simply. He's tough but fair. Protects his own. Keeps his word. But at what cost? I wondered. And to whom? The answer came sooner than I expected. As we loaded our purchases into the carriage, a well-dressed man approached, flanked by 2 others whose hands rested too casually near their guns. Well, the man said, looking me up and down in a way that made my skin crawl. Samuel Jenkins' secret daughters. I've been waiting to meet you. Billy stepped between us. Mr. Blackwood. The ladies were just leaving. Not yet, I think. Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. I have a message for their father. Perhaps they'd be kind enough to deliver it. Any message for the boss can go through proper channels, Billy said, his voice steady despite being outnumbered. This one's personal. Blackwood leaned around Billy to look at me. Tell your father that Harlan Porter was my friend, and I don't forget my friends or their enemies. As he turned to leave, he added, beautiful girls. It would be a shame if something happened to them in this dangerous world. Billy's hand had moved to his gun. You threatening these ladies, Blackwood? The man laughed, just making conversation. For now. He tipped his hat mockingly. Ladies. As they walked away, I realized I was shaking. Not just with fear, but with anger. Who was that? I demanded as Billy hurried us into the carriage. Victor Blackwood. Runs the gambling halls south of here. Sometimes works with your father, sometimes against him. Billy flicked the reins, setting the horses moving faster than was proper in town. We need to get you home. Because I'm just the farmer's daughter? I asked bitterly. The boss's weakness to be protected? Billy glanced at me in surprise. No, Miss Emma. Because Blackwood's a snake, and your father needs to know he's showing his fangs. As our carriage sped back toward the mansion, I made a decision. I was tired of being a pawn in my father's world, something to be protected, threatened, used as leverage. If this was to be my life now, I would learn to play the game myself. Starting with Victor Blackwood. Act 8. Absolutely not. Father's fist came down on his desk, so hard the inkwell jumped. You will stay away from Blackwood and his businesses. It had been 3 days since our encounter in town. 3 days I'd spent planning, observing, gathering information from servants and stable hands who didn't realize how much they revealed in casual conversation. He threatened us, I argued. Me and Sarah. Don't you want to know why? I know exactly why, Father said, pacing behind his desk like a caged mountain lion. Blackwood and Harlan Porter were more than business associates. Now Blackwood thinks making a move against me will cement his position as Harlan's successor. I lean forward. Then let me help. I have an idea. No. Father stopped pacing to look at me directly. Emma, I brought you into this house, but not into my business. That was our agreement. I never agreed to anything, I reminded him. You decided, just like you decided to lie to us for years. A flash of pain crossed his face. Good. I needed him off balance. Blackwood doesn't know me. I pressed on. He's seen me once. I could. Enough. Father rarely raised his voice, and the sound made me flinch. This discussion is over. You will focus on your studies with the tutor I've hired. In the spring, you and Sarah will go east to a proper school, far from this territory and the dangers in it, so you can go back to being just the boss. I stood up, anger burning through my caution. Not a father with daughters who complicate things. Father looked as if I'd slapped him. Is that what you think? I want to send you away. What else should I think? You kept us in the dark for years. Now that we know the truth, you want us gone. I want you safe. His voice broke on the last word. Emma, look at what happened when Jed and his men came to our farm. Look at what Blackwood threatened. Every day you and Sarah are here. You're in danger because of me. I hadn't expected the raw emotion in his voice, the guilt in his eyes. For a moment, I saw not the boss, but my father, the man who had taught me to ride, who had held me when I cried after Mother died. Then teach me to survive in your world, I said, softening my tone. If danger will follow us anyway, shouldn't we know how to face it? Father sank into his chair, suddenly looking much older. Your mother would never forgive me. Mother's gone, I said gently. And we're here, in this life, whether she would have wanted it or not. He was quiet for a long moment. What exactly did you have in mind? I try not to show my surprise that he was actually listening. Blackwood doesn't know me well. I could visit his gambling hall with Rose, just to observe, learn his operation. Out of the question. Father. But, he continued, raising a hand to stop my protest. I will allow you to sit in on certain business discussions. Learn how things work from a safe distance. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was a start. And Sarah? Sarah is 12, Father said firmly. She stays completely out of this. On that, at least, we agreed. The next morning, I found myself in Father's study with Rose, Miguel, and 2 men I'd seen around the property, but hadn't met. Father sat behind his desk, explaining the accounting system that tracked their various businesses, both legal and otherwise. Jenkins Holdings owns 6 saloons, 3 hotels, and controlling interest in the bank, he explained. Those are our legitimate faces. The other operations, protection fees, gambling, the occasional special shipment, those go through different channels. For 2 hours, they talked about numbers, territories, and personnel issues while I listened, try to memorize every detail. It was more boring than I'd expected. Less gunfights and robberies, more careful planning and money management. What about Blackwood? I asked during a lull. What exactly does he control? The men exchanged glances. Victor Blackwood runs gambling operations from Red Creek to the southern border, Father explained reluctantly. Until recently, he did so with my permission, paying a percentage for the privilege. And now he stopped paying, started pushing into our territory, and is likely behind 3 shipments that have gone missing. So why not just? I made a cutting motion across my throat. Father's expression darkened. Because unlike some in this business, I don't solve every problem with violence. Blackwood has powerful friends back east. Killing him would bring the kind of attention none of us want. Then you need leverage, I suggested. Something he values more than his ambition. Father studied me with new interest. You've been giving this thought. Before I could respond, Billy burst into the room without knocking, something I'd never seen any of Father's men do. Boss, he gasped, clearly having run all the way. It's Miss Sarah. She's gone. The room exploded into action. Father was on his feet, barking orders. Men ran to saddle horses. Rose disappeared to organize search parties. When was she last seen? Father demanded. At breakfast, Billy answered. Mrs. Cooper thought she was with you or Miss Emma. Her room's empty, but... He hesitated. But what? Father grabbed Billy's shoulder. Her coat and hat are missing, and one of the small horses from the stable. I felt sick. She went riding? Alone? No, Father said grimly. Sarah's many things, but she's not disobedient. She wouldn't leave without permission unless someone convinced her. I finished, ice forming in my stomach. Blackwood. Father's face turned to stone. Find her, he ordered the men. Every available rider. Now. As the room emptied, I caught his arm. This is my fault. I was with her yesterday when his message came. His message? Father's voice was dangerously quiet. A boy delivered a note. I thought it was from the dressmaker. My hands trembled as I retrieved the crumpled paper from my pocket. Sarah opened it before I could stop her. Father read it quickly, his face growing paler with each word. Did she show this to anyone else? I shook my head. She said it was a secret game. I told her to forget it, that it was nonsense. Tears filled my eyes. I should have brought it to you immediately. Father crushed the note in his fist. It's not your fault. Blackwood is playing a game I thought he didn't have the spine for. What does he want? Me? Father grabbed his gun belt from a hook by the door. He knows I'll come for Sarah. It's a trap. Then don't go alone. I cried. Take Rose, Miguel, all you men. If I bring an army, Sarah will die before we reach her. Father checked his pistol with practiced hands. Blackwood wants to talk. So we'll talk. Let me come with you, I begged. I can help. To my surprise, Father didn't immediately refuse. He studied my face for a long moment. Why should I? Because I know Sarah better than anyone. I can spot her signals, her habits. And because I straightened my shoulders. Because I'm your daughter, the boss's daughter. It's time I started acting like it. Something like pride flickered in Father's eyes. This isn't a game, Emma. If you come, you follow my orders exactly. No heroics. I understand. Father nodded once. Get your riding clothes. We leave in 10 minutes. The ride to Blackwood's territory was tense and silent. Father had agreed to bring only Billy and me, fearing more would trigger Blackwood's men to harm Sarah. Rose and Miguel would follow at a distance with reinforcements, but they wouldn't intervene unless signaled. Blackwood's gambling hall stood at the edge of a small settlement that had grown up around a silver mine. The building was garish compared to the dusty street, painted red with gold trim, windows glowing with lamplight, though it was barely noon. Father dismounted, motioning for us to do the same. Remember, he said quietly, No matter what happens in there, your only job is to get Sarah out. Billy will help you. Don't wait for me. Father, promise me, Emma. The intensity in his eyes made me nod. I promise. Inside, the gambling hall was nearly empty. Just a few men playing cards at a far table, watching us warily. A broad staircase led to a second floor, where I assumed the serious games happened after dark. Blackwood waited for us at a table near the bar, drinking whiskey as if he hadn't a care in the world. Two armed men stood behind him. Jenkins, he said with a cold smile. Right on time. And you brought your eldest. How touching. Where's my daughter? Father's voice was deadly calm. Safe. For now. Blackwood gestured to the empty chairs across from him. Sit. Let's discuss our future working relationship. Father remained standing. There is no future where you take my child and live to tell about it. Bold words for a man whose little girl is currently at my mercy. Blackwood snapped his fingers, and a door at the back of the room opened. Sarah appeared, held firmly by a large man with a scarred face. She looked frightened but unharmed, still wearing her blue riding coat. Sarah, I called. Are you all right? She nodded, eyes wide. I'm sorry, Emma. The note said Father was hurt, that I needed to come alone or they'd. Quiet, child, her captor growled, shaking her roughly. Father's hand moved to his gun, but Blackwood clicked his tongue. I wouldn't. My man there has very fast reflexes. One wrong move, and your precious daughter pays the price. What do you want? Father asked, though I could tell from his eyes he already knew. Simple. Control of the territory from Red Creek south. No more payments to you. And as a gesture of goodwill, your public support when I take Harlan's place on the council. The council? I'd heard Father mention it once. Some sort of governing body for the various outlaw factions. Apparently, Blackwood had greater ambitions than just gambling halls. In exchange for my daughter's life? Father clarified. Exactly. Blackwood smiled thinly. Do we have a deal? Father seemed to consider it, his face unreadable. I accept your terms. Release my daughter. Blackwood laughed. Not so fast. Papers first. He gestured to a document on the table. Sign over your interests. Then the girl goes free. As Father stepped forward to examine the papers, I caught Sarah's eye. She was blinking rapidly in a pattern I recognized from childhood. Our secret code. 3 quick, 2 slow, 3 quick. Danger behind you. I shifted slightly, trying to see what she was warning about without being obvious. In the mirror behind the bar, I glimpsed movement on the balcony above, a man with a rifle taking aim at Father's back. I had seconds to make a decision. Father had ordered me to focus only on Sarah. But if that rifleman fired, I reached for the small derringer Father had pressed in my hand before we entered. He'd show me how to use it on the ride over, just in case, he'd said. Time seemed to slow. Father bent over the papers, his back to the balcony. Billy stood tense beside me, unaware of the threat above. Sarah's eyes were locked on mine, silently pleading. Wait, I said loudly, stepping forward. All eyes turned to me, including, crucially, the rifleman's. Before my father signs, I want to examine those papers. Blackwood frowned. This doesn't concern you, girl, doesn't it? I moved closer to Father, positioning myself to block the rifleman's view. If he's signing over our family's interests, I should understand what we're losing. Father gave me a sharp look, but I kept my face neutral as I whispered. Balcony. Rifleman. His expression didn't change, but he shifted his weight subtly, hand moving closer to his gun. Your daughter has spirit, Jenkins, Blackwood observed. Shame she won't live to use it. The room froze as Blackwood's meaning sank in. He never intended to let any of us leave alive. Now, Father shouted suddenly. Everything happened at once. Father flipped the heavy oak table onto Blackwood and his men. Billy drew his gun with surprising speed, firing at the man holding Sarah. I aimed my small derringer at the balcony and fired, not expecting to hit the rifleman, but hoping to disrupt his aim. Sarah broke free as her captor fell, running toward me as bullets splintered the wood around us. Father pushed us both behind the bar, shielding us with his body. The back door, he ordered Billy. Get them out. Now, not without you, I insisted. The sound of gunfire outside told us Rose and Miguel had arrived with reinforcements. Blackwood's men were caught in a crossfire, confused and outgunned. Father smiled grimly. "I'm right behind you. Go." Billy led us through the kitchen, past terrified workers who pressed themselves against walls to let us pass. Behind us, I heard Father's gun fire 3 more times, then silence. Outside, Rose waited with horses. "The boss?" she asked as she helped Sarah mount. "Still inside," Billy replied. "With Blackwood." I turned back toward the gambling hall, fear gripping my heart. "We can't leave him." "Your father gave orders," Rose said firmly. "You and Sarah ride with me." Now, before I could argue, the back door burst open. Father emerged, blood staining his left sleeve, but otherwise intact. Relief flooded through me. "Blackwood?" Rose asked. "Won't be a problem anymore," Father replied grimly, mounting his horse with a wince. "Let's go home." The ride back was quiet, Sarah clinging to Father despite his injured arm. As the mansion came into view, I pulled my horse alongside his. "You knew it was a trap," I said. It wasn't a question. Father nodded. Blackwood was never subtle, but I couldn't risk Sarah's life by not coming. "Is it always like this?" I asked. "The violence, the danger?" "Sometimes," he admitted, "but not always." He looked at me with tired eyes. "Still want to learn the business?" I thought about the fear I'd felt seeing Sarah in danger, the sickness in my stomach when Father had disappeared inside the gambling hall. But I also remembered the clarity that had come in that moment of decision, the certainty of what needed to be done. "Yes," I said finally, "but on one condition." Father raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "We change things. Find a better way than this endless cycle of threats and violence." I expected him to laugh or dismiss the idea as naive. Instead, he studied me with newfound respect. "Maybe that's exactly why you should learn," he said quietly, "to build something better than I could." As we rode through the gates of what was now truly our home, I realized that my life as just a farmer's daughter was over forever. But perhaps my life as the boss's daughter, a different kind of boss than this territory had ever seen, was just beginning. Sarah squeezed my hand as we dismounted. "Are we staying here now?" "For good." I looked at Father, waiting for his answer. He gazed at the house his money had built, at the operation he had created through violence and fear. Then he looked at us, his daughters, his legacy. "Yes," he said finally, "we're staying. All of us. Together." It wasn't the end of danger or difficult choices, but it was a beginning, a family reunited, secrets laid bare, and a future that we would shape together. The farmer's daughter and the boss were no longer separate people. They were my father, Samuel Jenkins, and I was no longer just Emma, who tended crops and hung laundry. I was Emma Jenkins, the boss's daughter, and I had work to do.